And not to get into too many political weeds here, the one thing I always use as a sort of a proxy on all of this, Speaker, is what the markets do. When the markets got wind late yesterday that Rod Rosenstein had visited the president again to say, look, you are not a target of this investigation. Second time in as many months he was essentially saying that, or that was the message from the Mueller camp. And then the Andy McCabe thing that he could be facing criminal charges. They were down already a lot close to 200, but they pared those losses in half. And it feeds a narrative that I've seen consistently play out, that the markets, whatever you might think of President Trump, they want him there. They like what he has done for the economy, and they don't want that disrupted. So the better things look for the president, better things look for stocks. Worse things look for the president, worse the things look for stocks. What do you make of that?
Well, look, I think it's valid. Look, this is the most pro-free enterprise president probably since Calvin Coolidge. And he has been aggressive at deregulation. He's been aggressive at appointing...
Even more so than Ronald Reagan?
I think so. I mean, if you look at the scale of deregulation, for example, if you look at the deliberate cuts in the business tax, not that Reagan wouldn't have approved of it, but Trump did it. If you look at the degree to which Trump himself is a businessman, I mean, Ronald Reagan, who you know I loved and worked with, but Ronald Reagan in the end was a great movie star, but he wasn't an entrepreneurial businessman. Trump's a genuine entrepreneur. He feels the rhythm of entrepreneurship, and I think small business people in particular see Trump as their guy, doing the things that make their life better. So I do think that you look at the current economy, I think we've had 2 months in a row now of the lowest unemployment numbers in modern times. We have the lowest African-American unemployment rate in history. There are a lot. You're
not afraid he could screw that up with the trade war and everything else?
No, I actually think taking China head on is unavoidable. Yeah. The Chinese have had a rigged deal for 20 years. They have grown in part by stealing our intellectual property.
A lot of farmers are worried, Speaker. They worry that this is going to boomerang on them, that he could be losing his base doing that. Do you think that's a real risk? So he has to get some big concessions out of the Chinese to justify this, right?
And I think he will. But I also think if you're the Chinese and you've had a great 20-year run of exploiting the Americans, and suddenly you're faced with a president who says no more, that's a pretty huge shock. I mean,
and others have tried everything else, right? To your point, and Republicans and Democrats alike, and it's never worked.
You can drink tea and eat rice with the Chinese president all you want to. They don't get it, and he'll smile at you and say, "Yes, we're going to try really hard." Now,
he, in a speech, as Xi Jinping, you're talking about, of course, had said, we're going to make some progress in adjusting auto tariffs and the like, allowing financial concerns to come to China. But he hasn't acted on that. I mean, he's offered some promises.
Look, there's an easy ultimate test for Xi Jinping, who I think, frankly, is setting China up for an enormous disaster. I mean, you look at what they're doing to create a totalitarian state. Yeah. And everything we said in the early 1950s about why the Soviets would fail is about to become true in China. I mean, they're doing stuff that is really Orwellian 1984 kind of absolute controls that in the end are going to destroy their capacity to innovate. But having put that to one side, the core test for Xi Jinping is simple. Will he disband the People's Liberation Army cyber theft system? I mean, most of their cyber theft is done by the People's Liberation Army. It's not done by some random hacker in Shanghai. It's done by the official government of China through its military. And they steal, according to the Director of National Intelligence under Obama, the estimate was that they steal something like $460 billion a year in intellectual property, more than our total sales to China. That's only the core test.
Let me ask you about an issue that came up when I was talking to Mitch McConnell in Washington as well, and that was this famous, some called it a photo op of the president railing against the $1.3 trillion spending measure and sort of, waving his finger, people saying, this is the last time I'm going to do this, don't do this again to me next year. Lo and behold, Mitch McConnell says he knew what was in there, at least his people knew what was in there, and his message was he was kind of throwing us under the bus. What did you think of that whole dust-up? You've been in Congress, you know their point of view, and that the president held some of them out.
Look, I think, first of all, the president really did what Ronald Reagan would have done. Reagan always had national security first, economic growth second, deficit third. He had General Mattis, Secretary of Defense Mattis, saying to him that Obama had so weakened and underfunded defense that we had to rebuild it. So the president's got this bill in which the Democrats and some Republicans were charging a tariff, an extra charge, in order to get the defense money. And the choice was, do you want to get the defense money or not? And so he signed it. But
well, that was McConnell's argument. You know, none of us loved this, but it was this was the way we found agreement. The president knew that, his people knew that, and I don't know. I just got a feeling, Speaker, that he was there's still some agita between the two of those guys.
Well, of course, look, there's bound to be, because the Senate rules are such. I mean, I'll give you the other example, which is appointments. You look at what Schumer has done to screw up the government of the United States in a way which puts partisanship, frankly, above patriotism. And it's a disaster what they've done. And candidly, I wish that Senator McConnell, who I have great respect for, but I wish he would keep the Senate in session every day, no weekends, until they get every single nominee done. And my hunch is it would take 2 weeks. At the end of the second week, the average Democrat...
If you threaten working weekends,
if you say to them you don't get to go home about 2 weeks, they could last 2 weeks, and the average Democrat would turn to Schumer and say, that's it, no more, we got to go home, cut a deal.
All right. How's your wife enjoying the Vatican?
She is doing an amazingly good job for the country, and, you know, it's just overwhelming to be at the Vatican from Callista's standpoint, and I think I'm very proud of her. I'm proud of how well she represents us.
All right. Thank you, Speaker. Very good seeing you again.